It's Monday, July 28th, and this is your Chapo. I hope you all enjoyed the substitute teacher, but everybody put away your notebooks, take out your pencils. It's time for a pop quiz. That's right. We're wheeling the TV out of the classroom, and thanks again to our substitute teachers seeking derangements. But I'm back from vacation, and Felix and I are going to duo this episode today. But we got to get into it because last time I was on the show a week ago, we talked to Jasper Nathaniel about what's going on in the West Bank. And I guess that was a minor diversion from the horror of what's taking place in Gaza. But today, unfortunately, we have to return to the shocking reality of that, which, like, I feel like, this isn't going on for almost 2 years now. And there have been so many times where, I've had to hit record, start talking about this on the show, and continually have to, face a reality that there is no bottom to this. It just, the evil and the horror are beyond comprehension, and they're getting worse with every minute. And just for frame of reference here, I just like to talk about the latest chapter in this, which is the imminent mass starvation and mass intentional starvation of thousands and thousands of people in Gaza right now. So just some facts here for context here. The United Nations World Food Program, which is headed by Cindy McCain, of all people, has stated that nearly 100,000 women and children are urgently need treatment for malnutrition, and that almost a third of people in Gaza currently are not eating for days. And medical workers say they have run out of many of the key treatments and medicines to treat chronic malnutrition. The Gaza Health Ministry says that so far, over the last couple of weeks, 133 people have died because of malnutrition. At least 87 of them were babies or children. A month ago, the number of deaths from starvation during this atrocity stood at 65. Doctors Without Borders says a quarter of all young children and pregnant or breastfeeding women screened at its clinics in Gaza last week were malnourished. And then on top of that, nearly 900 people have been killed in the recent weeks while trying to queue for food at the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid distribution centers. And to put on top of that, 85% of Gaza's water and sanitation structures are now, that includes pipelines, wells, and water treatment facilities, are now destroyed and inoperable. And I think something to keep in mind about acute and severe malnutrition is that after a certain point, just feeding someone does not help. Your organs are in full failure and you need intensive treatment for weeks to recover from it.
Right. You need the types of medical facilities that Israel has been attacking nonstop for almost 2 years now to not kill somebody in the process of renutrition. I don't know if this was a pretty big case. I'm sure a few people listening followed it, but the case of that man who I believe was in his 30s or 40s, who had just been he'd been kept as basically a prisoner by his mom, and was
that story
in Boston. He was something like 45 pounds by the time that they found him, and fortunately, being in Boston and having world-class medical facilities, they were able to go through the incredibly strenuous and complex process of feeding and hydrating this severely undernourished man. But think about the same thing, the same problem from hell medically of feeding people, where the last functioning hospitals where people could give birth, that had adequate trauma centers and birth centers, have just been blown to fucking smithereens. That doctors have been repeatedly attacked,
abducted, assassinated, and they're killed with their families along with them.
Or if they haven't been killed, had their families murdered in an effort to just demoralize them too much to do anything. I don't know how long it will take to get a full accounting of everything that has been done just with the GHF atrocities alone, or this campaign, this specific campaign of starvation and murder. But it is going to include probably thousands, after the fact, after the West decides some acceptable solution that absolves everyone who now, at the time we're recording this, they have decided that this is the moment that they found out.
Yeah.
This is the moment that they found out, and for the rest of history, they will declare that the moment that we knew, we put an end to it.
Well, yeah, this is really what I want to talk about at the beginning of the show, because like over the last 2 weeks or whatever, it does seem among the savvy and half savvy sort of mouthpieces of the establishment media that they have turned some corner where like the previous year and a half of unrestrained massacre and slaughter was simply a messy and complicated situation that was ultimately justified by Israel's quote right to defend itself, or October 7th. But there's something about the mass starvation of children who have just been reduced to skeletons that is now too much for them. And you're seeing in real time a kind of I don't know, like a reformatting of the propaganda apparatus to preserve. I mean, I'm not like in a moral sense, but to preserve future credibility and employment. And like, I would almost prefer the outright Holocaust denial of people like Brett Stevens than to the people who are now trying to find a way to be like, this is awful. It's gone too far. Like when I see like senators and congressmen who just a week and a half ago had their photo taken with Benjamin Netanyahu when he visited America, now issuing public statements that like Israel's got to let aid in. Like this is a humanitarian catastrophe. It's gone too far. I really just have to wonder, like, what shifted here? Like, Felix, I'm interested in here. Like, is it just like in the Western liberal mind, is starvation just simply so ghastly as opposed to just shooting people in the head or blowing them to shreds or burning them alive?
I mean, I think it's partly that, and it reminds me of John Dolan has written and spoken extensively about things that Western leaders think are harder to justify versus, killing people with bombs or artillery or even small arms. You know, Airstrikes are on the highest scale of acceptability, whereas things like gas are on the lower scale. And I think you could probably put starvation there. But I think it's a combination of that. It's with GHF. I mean, the GHF thing is it is just too indefensible, except for the most insane people possible, except for people like Betar. And I also think that, I mean, we've talked about it this episode and just throughout these last near 2 years, that I would assume that U.S. senators and congressional reps and people all throughout Western governments that have completely facilitated this every step of the way, there is probably some true number of casualties, deaths, and permanent disfigurations, and just life-changing injuries. There's some true estimate that is not in the press outside of like some medical journals that have tried to make an estimate. And I think they're sort of trying to position themselves and forestalling that when that does inevitably come out. That when they may believe that when that number comes out, it will be just impossible to defend with the usual tricks of the lobby.
I said for like what going on a year now, like the way they've just sort of frozen the the fatalities at like 50,000. Now I guess now it's clocked up to 60,000, but like everybody knows that it's in the six figures. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people who are already dead. And like I said, now thanks to this, engineered starvation, this engineered famine, you're looking at probably five figures of people who are currently alive who are not going to be, even with food. And like not only that, but like I think they all know that something even worse is coming. Like, I think they know that, like, the Gaza, quote unquote, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, things like that are an apparatus of Israel's final solution here. And I think they know what that's going to look like. And like, I think they're dealing with an American public that has, like, put up with this for going on almost 2 years now, but is reaching a point where they don't know how to justify it in their minds anymore. And the traditional organs of propaganda are beginning to, like, I just want to use a couple examples here of what I'm talking about from the New York Times, which is, I think, the most reliable and the most sophisticated of the kind of, I don't know, like the war and like Zionist propaganda apparatus. And the thing I want to the thing that was most ghastly to me was from the New York Times Jerusalem bureau chief, a guy named Patrick Kingsley. This was a headline article from this week. It says here, it begins, for a year and a half, experts have warned that Israel's failure to plan for a power transition in Gaza would lead to anarchy, making it harder to deliver aid and stymie efforts to defeat Hamas. A sequence of shootings in Gaza over the weekend, one near Gaza's southern border and another at its northern edge, have highlighted the accuracy of those predictions. On Saturday, Israeli soldiers opened fire on civilians near a food distribution site run by Israeli-backed private contractors. On Sunday, Israeli soldiers opened fire on civilians as crowds gathered near a convoy of food trucks sent by the United Nations towards areas controlled by Hamas. The Israeli military said its soldiers had fired, quote, warning shots to deter people who posed a, quote, threat. It's that first sentence when he says, and then the headline does this as well, where they were like, they have to discuss the fact that people are just being gunned down for sport by security contractors as they wait for some meager rations to be distributed to them. But it's the framing of it, of saying that all of this is, experts have been warning that this is a failure, quote, it's a failure of Israel to plan for a power transition in Gaza, a failure of a lack of planning. But like, this is to obscure the reality that what you are seeing is the plan. That is what Israel has planned in conjunction with our own government. This is what they have planned, and they are executing that plan right now. What you are seeing is their plan for a, quote, post-war power vacuum in Gaza.
The Amalek speech was like not even a week into this.
Yeah.
That is what's so insane about all of this. 15, 20 years ago, the optimistic thinking with a lot of people about, living in the most recorded and documented time in human history was that, well, it's so easy to get caught out now. If you say you didn't know something, if some leader says that they weren't aware of something, we could easily point to 7 or 8 recordings of them indicating their knowledge of whatever thing they're denying from years ago. In reality, all this modern media consumption environment has achieved is just a flattening of all time, where nothing that happened, if something happened more than like a week ago, it may as well not have happened. It's just so easy to drown things out, and for a paper like the New York Times to just completely ignore the words of the Israeli government and the words of the military, them just right as this began almost 2 years ago, saying this was their goal.
The New York Times does not cover anything that an Israeli politician says in Hebrew. And just to give an example of that, Netanyahu had some indignant statement that really he addressed the media in English, accusing them of lying about starvation in Gaza and blood libeling Israel for saying that they're starving children to death. Over the weekend in Hebrew, he issued a statement to the Israeli public explaining that he had been forced to let in a meager amount of aid, like 100 trucks or something like that. And forced in the context of that, like, we have to do this because if we don't, we won't be able to continue the war and genocide. That's what he says for the Israeli public consumption. And outlets like the New York Times shield the American public entirely from what is said by Israeli politicians and military leaders, or just in their media. And I think what you're seeing now is, like, you see so much of it is people whose brains are just desperately reaching out to grasp onto something to justify this or to ignore it. And like, as far as the aid distribution and the Gaza Holocaust front, The line I keep hearing over and over again is that this is necessary because, quote, Hamas would steal all of the aid. And like the aid distribution needs to be militarized and it needs to be run by mercenary psychopaths and the Israeli military. Because were it not for that, if we just let in all of the aid, Hamas would steal it. What I find so galling and really, I don't know, grimly amusing about that is that Israel has been claiming that they've been fighting a war on Hamas for like 2 years now with like the top flight of military technology that this country can furnish with them. And somehow after that time, Hamas is still able to steal all of the aid that gets into Gaza. Come on.
Also, that Israel armed like a bunch of fucking losers and criminals who were
Who are the
or
ones
still
actually
are
looting all the
affiliated
aid?
with ISIS,
Yes.
who are the ones who are pilfering all the fucking aid.
They let that guy write a Wall Street Journal op-ed piece, the leader of that gang.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That was in the fucking Wall Street Journal, and they were openly talking about how they needed to fund these groups to clear Hamas out. And now, yeah, Hamas has been stealing it, but we just can't show you any proof. I mean, if any other entity in the world, if they lied this fucking much, you wouldn't even bother going to them for comment.
And like, just to explore further, like the nature of like this illusory or somewhat fraudulent shift in establishment opinion about what's going on is that like it's similar to the Iraq war, is that like with power and with like the media on your side, you can lie yourself into a war and you can commit like unrestrained atrocities for a good long period of time. But the thing is, like the ongoing maintenance of sort of consent and the public imagination requires a series and like sort of I don't know, it requires tending to a series of increasingly insane and unbelievable lies. And like what the thing is, like that can't go on forever. And I'm not saying that like once people know the truth, everything will be different. Like I'm using the example of the Iraq war because like we see a similar effect happen with that, where it's just like everyone in our government and media went along with it for a good 4, maybe 5 years. But like the maintenance of that illusion broke down at a certain point. And then there was this shift where it became okay to sort of like broach the idea that like, hey, this was a disaster, or this was a mistake. Never that we were like intentionally lied into it, but basically like everybody knew that they lied about it, and like a million people got killed, and it was okay that for people to acknowledge that it was a failure and that we never should have done it. And in reality, and like the thing is, I want to talk about accountability in a second, and electoral accountability. There was electoral accountability for that. In that, like, that's I think a main reason Barack Obama was elected president, because the American public had turned against the Iraq War, and they voted for him because he was opposed to it as it was going on, and they thought they would be getting a change in power. Well, what happened is that like the leaders may have changed, but the thing is like all the people who ran the Iraq War and perpetrated it maintain their exact same positions in government. I'm not talking about like Dick Cheney or Donald Rumsfeld. I'm talking about like the people who ran Obama's foreign policy apparatus were not people who were like opposed to the Iraq War. Like Brett McGurk, for instance, was in the Obama administration. Like the people he put in charge of, like David Petraeus. So like there's no electoral accountability if there is not criminal accountability for these people.
In the world after Obama, 2 out of 3 Democratic candidates for president were people who backed the Iraq War. Kamala was the first one to get the nomination who did not.
Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. Like Obama appointed Joe Biden his vice president.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton his secretary of state.
Right. But the difference with Iraq, I think, is that the sort of very pernicious thing about Iraq to me is that it seemed like even from the onset that it had a mechanism built into it for where, if you got buyer's remorse, there was a mistake mechanism built into it where you could retroactively make your support for it. You could characterize it as a mistake that you made because you were just too gung-ho about protecting America, or
you believe George W. Bush.
You believe George Bush in the afterglow of 9/11. With this, there was never any built-in, I made a mistake mechanism, because, I mean, I guess it was just never assumed that Americans would even give a shit about Israel policy, much less reverse their opinions in a seismic movement as they have in the last 5 years. But we're seeing in real time now, like when you see someone like Dan Goldman or Amy Klobuchar or any of these people trying to walk it back, those people in the free press, Barry Weiss's fucking rag.
Oh yeah, being like a month ago they were saying there is no starvation happening.
Right.
In
They
Gaza.
called it a starvation hoax.
Yep.
Walking it all, like not even walking it back, but like they're in real time creating there was a mistake mechanism in real time. And that's why it's so uncanny and jarring. With the Iraq war, the first thing they said was WMDs. Well, then, 6-7 years later, you could go, oh, I believe that there were WMDs. And if you were in my position, you wouldn't want to take that chance. With this, there's really no such thing. I mean, all you can really say is, oh, either I just signed on to this zombie bipartisan consensus and I thought I would never have to even think about it or address it. There would be no constituency in American politics that, demanded me to explain any of this. Or my career has been sponsored by going above and beyond even that, by being a even more out and out bloodthirsty psycho who responds to any challenge by claiming anti-Semitism and the critics' desire for dead Jews. They thought, well, up to this point, that worked. Now, I guess the narrative for this will be what we saw in that New York Times article. The Israeli government just failed to plan. They just failed to plan what it would actually be like.
I'll tell you what they are saying. And I guess like this is the rhetorical move now that they've chosen, which, as you rightly pointed out, they can't go to, hey, like I believe the president, or this was a mistake.
I was convinced by Joe Biden. He was too persuasive.
Yeah. And this point of view is, of course, given voice by Matt Yglesias, who is I think, the pitch perfect representative of this sort of form of human being. And what he said is that, he shared the Free Press article, and he was like, to the doubters and skeptics out there, there has been a lot of crying wolf about Gaza. But read this article from the Free Press, which should convince you that now the wolf is here and it's real. So the idea being is up until 2 weeks ago, anyone who was saying desperately to anyone who would listen that Gaza is on the verge of a man-made and specifically engineered famine, and that thousands are at risk of death as a result of this, was crying wolf. But then something happened over the last 2 weeks. They got the good data in. They got the correct data regarding the price of flour in Gaza. And they're like, well, now we can rationally conclude that indeed Gaza is now, experiencing starvation. And I just what I want to know with these people is what I'd like to see them be asked is, when exactly did this all become too much for you? What was the moment where you decided to go, hey, I supported everything up until this moment, but now it seems like it's gone too far?
Right. Was it the moment where, you saw the New York Post, and they weren't the first to do this. There were a lot of Hezbollah mouthpieces who did this prior to them, but this was its biggest introduction in the English-speaking world, was taking that one horrifying photo of that one emaciated child in Gaza and going, well, actually, you saw this kid brought out as an example of the starvation, but he actually has a degenerative disease.
Felix, I've seen that so much. And when I say there have been so many moments over the last year and a half, 2 years of this stuff where I felt like I had seen the limit of how sickening human beings can be. The stuff I've seen from people who are saying that the photos of those emaciated skeletal children are, quote, a hoax, either because the mother or adult holding them looks to be fat or, I don't know, well-fed. And they're like, oh, they ate all the children's food. How come all the adults look healthy? And then they point to the idea that the kids in question already suffer from cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy. So it's oh, gee, so they're not really starving to death. They're not really the cutting edge of the first people who will succumb to a lack of food in a horrifying way. They were sick already, so they're not being starved to death. And look at their parents. Look at their parents. They look well fed. Looks like they ate all the food. It's gee, starvation will attack and kill the growing and the elderly before its effects are seen on adults who are not growing. Their body doesn't need the same level of calories to grow and energy to like literally grow and mature. So like they're able to withstand, obviously are able to withstand the effects of it longer.
I mean, it's not,
for instance, a child with cerebral palsy.
It's not even like worth responding to though, because like the people, if you are going that far to say that, then you do on some level know that starvation is happening and you're happy about it.
Yes.
If
but but you know that you can't publicly say that you're happy about what's happening.
When you're speaking Hebrew, you're talking about how happy you are about it and how mad you are that now that the English speaking world is catching wind of this, that you might have to like just take a little bit, take one toe in the boot off the neck a little bit. But for someone like Iglesias, he probably saw that and thought, well, I could no, that's too hard. That's something that people will bring back years and years later to shove in my face. I know. I will start out with the obvious caveat that everyone knows, everyone who was against this from the onset, they're annoying. The people suffering this, they're also annoying. So I will give a fig leaf to that. But unfortunately, the annoying people here were right.
Well, no, he doesn't say the annoying people were right. He says like they were wrong because like everything they said was true.
Right. They were right,
but it's only true
accident.
Now over the last 2 weeks. It wasn't true for the previous year and a half.
Right, they were right by accident because they were saying this the entire time, and now just our luck, it actually happened.
And keep in mind, this is the exact same thing he argued about the war in Iraq. By the way,
right.
He's like, all the protesters out in the streets marching against this war, all the college students and activist groups, they were merely right by default. Whereas, like, I was correct to support it, but then, like, accidentally or through some quirk of fate, there weren't any WMDs and the war turned out to be a disaster. And, like, at some vague, ill-defined point, it became true. But like, whereas it wasn't true before, but when it became true, like when the data and the facts and like, the wonks agreed that like, oh, like, yeah, like this is credible now. Then of course, like I changed my mind because the facts changed.
This is the same thing as if in 1945, you were like, look, we all know Jews are annoying, but I got to admit at this point, 2 million probably died.
Yeah. And like, you know what, like to bring up that example, like for instance, like when I see people who are flatly saying that like those images of just skeletal, emaciated children breathing their last breath in a life that of which they've literally only experienced pain and suffering, they look at that and they say, it's fake. It's Pallywood. It's not real. No one's being starved. Or they are being starved, but it's because Hamas took their food from them. And it's Hamas who's killing them. It's their parents who are killing them. Or like, that's not real. It's a photo from Yemen. It's exactly like Holocaust denial, like neo-Nazi Holocaust denials who will just be like, yeah, there's no way 6 million Jews were killed during World War II in the death camps. But if they were, that's good and appropriate.
Yeah, and that is the same thing for, all genocides in documented history, right? It didn't happen, but it was good. With this one, there is kind of a unique aspect in that you could see, you can go to someone's profile, you can go to someone who has Israeli and American citizenship, someone of prominence in both worlds, and you can look at their Twitter page and you can see them saying it didn't happen in English, and then in Hebrew you can watch them go, it sucks that we might have to stop doing this.
Exactly. And like, and I'm thinking about this in the context of like, like a shift in the government and elite opinions where they're like, Keir Starmer now has to say, oh, it's a catastrophe. Even though a year ago he said Israel has every right to cut off food, water, and electricity from Gaza. And it's just like, oh, gee, I can't help but feel partly responsible. Like, where did this humanitarian catastrophe come from that we now have to desperately do something about? And the world can't stand this. And we simply must get aid in. Gee, how did that situation happen? Could it be because like we literally like let it happen and did everything possible to facilitate it? And like, for instance, France, like Macron is now in, hot water with the Israelis because he announced France will recognize, quote, a Palestinian state. And like, sure, that sounds good. It sounds like a shift in like things are changing, but like really like all of like what Palestinian state? unless you're going to give them a military, it's functionally meaningless.
Yeah.
It's just a way to assuage, like, to sort of like, it's these half measures to avoid accountability or any true reckoning or any true like end to this horror that's happening.
It's
just
a preemptive. It's a preemptive land acknowledgement.
Yes, exactly.
That's all it fucking is. And this is, by the way, this is the reason that America is we're even fucking worse. Why we are the worst. Why we are the great Satan. This is why people call us that. Is because I can't think of a lot of other places, and I guess you could include England in this. The Anglo-American Empire is a great
Satan. The Anglosphere, yes.
Yes. Usually in history, people who are doing the genocide or have assisted as closely and as comprehensively as America, they are aware from the onset of how it's going to look bad. America is the only place where we would do that and then be surprised. Where someone like Dan Goldman, congressman from New York, a fervent, psychotic, bloodthirsty Zionist who has said all sorts of things that if he said them about anyone else would just be mired in controversy. Even he is going, ooh, I didn't know it was going to look this bad. I didn't know there were going to be starving kids, even though half the cabinet said that they wanted to do that 2 fucking years ago. The fact that we can do all this and then be surprised by the outcome, that is what makes us truly below contempt as a country.
Yeah, and it's like I do not possess any special insight into like my immediate judgment that Israel was about to undertake a genocide of which they would kill, starve, or expel every single Palestinian they could with our full consent and help. The reason I was able to make that judgment is I simply took seriously what the government and military leadership of Israel said, not just after October 7th, but in the years leading up to it. They're quite open about it. Like, it's like either you believe them or you don't. I believe them.
Yeah.
As long as you're talking about like people who, for which like, I guess I'm kind of like astounded at how their brain works, or like, it's just like, it's sort of baffling to me. Felix, I would like to talk about the exchange that you had with Tommy Vitor of Pod Slave America the other day, because I think it's really telling in a lot of respects about like this dawning realization among establishment media. And like, before I get into this, I should be fair to Tommy and the Pod Save guys that like they have been critical of Biden's handling of this. They have called for an arms embargo against Israel. They have said that the Democrats need to break with AIPAC, but like, knowing that makes his response and like the way his brain still processes this information even more baffling to me.
I think, he's not someone who I disbelieve in his genuine feelings on this. And he has talked about this to an audience that, like, I mean, the average Democrat is actually much more in line with where we've been for the past, however many decades.
Like, his platform, he is way more powerful and influential than we are. So I give him credit for that.
But there's more of a chance for like actual backlash from people either in their social circles or the audience or sponsors. And I think like in that discussion, I think he's aware of the contradiction, right? In trying to rebuild the Democratic Party after this contradiction. I think the reason that he like got mad is that it's embarrassing when he said something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he thought about it is what I'm saying. Yeah. And it's everyone has had that happen to them at one point in their lives. And it is like embarrassing when it happens.
For the context here, you replied to something he said the other day. Well, the point he made, the statement he made was, tweeting "I told you so" at people who change their mind about what's happening in Gaza does nothing to help the kids who are being starved to death. Welcome people into the tent, build a bigger coalition, and use it to force political change. Now, and I think the obvious response to that is that, like, if you are referring to regular voters or family members who just watch the news and read the newspaper and try to believe what they see, but now can no longer do it. Like, yes, obviously you should not be scolding and telling those people, "I told you so," or trying to like extract some pound of flesh out of them. But this absolutely does not and cannot apply to the politicians who did this. And by did this, I mean committed a genocide. nor their media sycophants.
The people that are being told, I told you so, they are all politicians or media members. Because most of the people that are now being told, I told you so, they're doing that because they are broadcasting their, I didn't know it was this bad, because they either have power or are in the media or something and feel they have to cover their asses. I have not seen a lot of instances of normal people choosing this week to go, ugh. As far as normal people, they've either that has happened, over the first year of this, or they were somehow already there, or, in the extreme minority of voters, they have always been on board and they continue to be so. A normal person would not take this week. They would not coordinate with Steny Hoyer. That's what I found so preposterous about it. There is no idealized normal person who just now was oh, I guess this is bad. I supported this all along. No, it is all people like fucking Dan Goldman and Amy Klobuchar.
And the point you made is that in terms of we need a big tent and we need a big coalition to end this war and force political change. Sure, I understand that. But this is this kind of what is sort of, I don't know, presented as this very savvy, hard-earned political wisdom is really kind of the definition of crackpot realism, in my opinion, because how can you have a coalition that includes the same people that, as you pointed out, were either too fucking stupid to see what was happening or just ignored it, or much more likely that they were the ones doing it themselves. And now these same people are saying, oh, well, don't impose a purity test on us. We need to be in the tent as part of the coalition that's going to, as you put it, concoct the solution to the disaster that we've authored.
Right. I mean, this is the same thing as if you went, well, look at that. Eichmann is distancing himself from the Holocaust. He implicitly knows it's bad. Don't we kind of need him? There are still a lot of Germans who supported the Third Reich. Don't we kind of need him? I guess they kind of did that. Well, now you have the Germany you have today. But yeah, I said that, and Vitor said,
he says in the short, his response to you was, in the short term, yes, obviously fucking yes. You need a political movement now to end the war. Then vote the shitheads out at the next election.
This is what I found.
Now this is really
incredibly ridiculous.
Yeah, because there's a couple things here. One, okay, then vote the shitheads out at the next election. First of all, a couple of years ago, those exact same shitheads were the people you were telling us to vote for because they had to save democracy from Donald Trump. We'll leave that aside. But the point you made is those same shitheads can read your tweets, Tommy.
Right, that's why I think he just didn't think about this.
Yeah.
I just think all of this was unconscious, and then he went, oh, fuck, I said something ridiculous. And then he got mad. I don't know. I don't see him as a grand villain in all of this. I really don't.
Me neither. But I'm perplexed. I'm just I don't think he's a villain, but I'm just perplexed by how his mind works its way around something like this, because he says there needs to be accountability for the people who what he's implying here is that there needs to be accountability for the people who supported this genocide. And like I said, to his credit, he has gone out while the election was going on, he criticized Biden for this very policy. But what I can't get my head around is that accountability for people who are guilty of committing a genocide does not include voting them out of office, or at least at the very least it begins with that. But I would say the accountability for a crime like that is somewhat stiffer.
Yeah, I think the reason that he found himself absolutely realizing that he said something absurd and got upset about it is because I think he is trying to reconcile okay, if we're going to hold the people responsible accountable, who is left?
Yeah.
I have, I've cast my lot with the Democratic Party. He's certainly cast his lot as a more left liberal member of that party. But if he does think that, and I think he does find this abhorrent, who would be left? And the answer is there would be like 4 congressional Dems left, 3 or 4, maybe.
And like, I mean, I guess you would say, well, like, if 4 people are the only one that passed this test, and like, like you've winnowed it down such that like you don't have a political coalition that can enact change. But like, what I find perplexing about this is just like they get to a certain point, but then like there's a corner that they can't turn.
I don't know. I don't want to like. At this point, we are like we are inventing hypotheticals of things he would say. I don't know. Maybe this is misplaced, but I think it would be good if someone who correctly identified this as a horrific crime and has identified a lot of its perpetrators could reconcile the inherent contradictions in the party that he is a part of. Because we've had to do that a little bit. We supported Bernie Sanders twice, and he's fucking disgraced himself on this. He has absolutely fucking disgraced himself on this, and it has cast a black mark on everyone who supported him. Bernie Sanders to the entire, Democratic Party and Joe Biden, it's not to the same level, but it is something that you do have to reconcile if you, have spent time supporting any of these people.
AOC too. I mean, shit. Like,
yeah,
I supported her.
absolutely.
We supported her on this show, and like,
yeah,
and Tommy's kind of crash out, like where he gave out the game, is that he got too mad, and he immediately was like, "Have fun throwing blood on AOC's door, but it's good for the Patreon," which is like a little much considering how much more money he makes than us. Like how many fucking advertisers and like Soros Foundation money that they have.
Then we have a 99-1 split on this show.
Yeah, and me personally, yeah. And like, but back to like the AOC thing, because I've said it before, but like I hold her to a higher standard because I did support her in the past, and I'm sorry, her comments the other week about like defensive weapons for Israel is just another example of like, you've got to like the contradictions here. Like you can't keep doing this. Like if you recognize, as AOC has called what Israel is doing a genocide, why would you want to give them weapons of any kind? Why would you wish to assist them in their ability to defend themselves from like, it's also like, hey, all we're doing is starting war after war with every country that surrounds us because we need all these defensive weapons to protect us.
One of the most insane fucking things. I mean, again, if that is the case, will you support giving not just Iron Dome technology? Let's give THAADs to Russia.
Yeah.
Why not? Will you support that, AOC?
Yeah.
Because we don't need more dead civilians.
But also, it's a question of like, once you, if in your mind, like, and I think in good faith, come to the conclusion that Israel is guilty of enacting a genocide right now, and it's going on this minute. But crucially, could be stopped. It could be stopped. It is not complete yet. Unlike like the genocides of the past, which are over now. You can't save those people; they're dead. Once you reach that conclusion, like there has to be some follow up about like, okay, well then what do we do with American citizens who are currently serving in the IDF? What do we do with someone like Joe Biden and his national security establishment, or Anthony Blinken? Does it change your opinion of the Houthis? Because like, I don't say this to be edgy or like, out there or whatever, but like really over the last couple of weeks or whatever, I've thought to myself on several occasions, you know what? I really don't have a problem with the United States sending tons and tons of American-made bombs to Israel. What I do have a problem with is the delivery method. Because like right now they're arriving on shipping pallets when I'd prefer to have them arrive being dropped from an airplane.
Yeah. What she said flies in the face of everything that we know about what happens when America gives this technology to other countries. We don't go around and go, okay, who needs it the most? And what happens when we give this to countries like fucking Saudi Arabia, who, has received fucking boatloads of defensive technology from us? They act more aggressively because they have missile defense. It's harder for people to fight back against them, especially when, as is often the case with Saudi Arabia and Israel, they are fighting against a much poorer enemy. But also just the implicit guarantee that comes with providing a client state or any other country who has good money to spend with advanced American missile defense or any defensive technology is that it is an implicit guarantee that we will continue helping them out because we don't want that falling into someone else's hands. That is where there is no differentiation on whether technology is offensive or defensive. It's already a fucking idiotic delineation. But for what is the actual utility of an arms sale like that, it isn't just, party B pays party A delivers materials. It is an implicit guarantee that you've got another like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of our weight, our financial weight, our cultural weight, our that will strong arm whatever state, whatever actor is giving them problems, because they have received that technology and we don't want anyone but the approved clients having it.
And if like in the spirit of a big tent and not pushing potential allies out of the coalition, like I'll give credit to the Pod Save guys for their stance on this, but I would just say that like I would encourage them to take it a little bit further, because the reality is like one of the main reasons we are in this situation right now is because that accountability that you are rightly desiring of was never applied to the people who supported the Iraq War. That's why Joe Biden became president.
Right.
Like, and if you had been like anyone who voted to support the Iraq War can never serve in elected office again, or will not be supported by us, will not be hosted on our show, we will not be giving them money, we will not be encouraging other people to vote for them. And then like to go another step further, yes, an arms embargo now, cut off diplomatic support and military aid for Israel. But there has to be a realization that this country is not our ally. They are the enemy of humanity, and they need to be stopped. And they need to be stopped by, heretofore, the only people who are showing interest in fighting them are Ansar Allah and Hamas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could give them weapons, but or if we don't want to do that, we can do it ourselves.
The only weapons shipment that AOC could vote for that would actually save lives, that would actually be defensive technology, yes, would be weapons sent to Ansar Allah. If she wants to save lives, she can fucking do that.
And, yes, vote the shitheads out of office. I am with you on that. But, I don't think you can be like Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken supported a genocide, but they're out of office now and they've been held accountable. They haven't. And then it's not just them. It's an entire ecosystem. It's an entire hierarchy of people who work for the government, who work for the national security state, who work for many lobbying groups and nonprofit organizations that are part of this network of support for genocide. And they need to be, it needs to be dismantled, stemmed root to stem.
Yeah, I would like to see, as a mainstream Democratic position, I think this is the bare minimum, a criminal investigation and prosecutions of everyone who was involved with GHF.
That's a good place to start, because it's it's the most shocking and egregious example.
Yeah,
of just like I said, not just mass murder, but a carefully planned and executed strategy of extermination.
Extremely premeditated. I do not think it is an extreme position to say that we cannot say this is a democratic or functional society and have those people walk free and buy houses and pick up new jobs and update their LinkedIns. No, those people, if we're going to have ADX prisons, those people belong in them for the rest of their fucking lives, at least.
Here's another position I'd like to see someone stake out. I don't want dual Israeli-American citizens who served in this current IDF. I don't want them coming back to America. I don't want them to be citizens of this country.
Well, I think more people to fill out ADX. I do think, I don't know. I don't want to inflict them on the rest of the world.
No, they can stay in Israel is what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess I'm kind of doing it now where I could go, well, we could say we're letting them in, but then we'll put them in prison.
Yeah.
But I've already said it though. So I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the thing.
Yeah, you're doing the Tommy thing.
Yeah. So see how easy it is.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
That's what I'm saying.
Game. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough in the discourse game. Before I turn from the, like I said from last week, before I turn from the atrocity to farce, I would like to just say though, that, like, I think like the question needs to be asked is that like anyone still supporting this horror show or finding ways to excuse it or pretend it's not happening. I don't think it's like too big a question or like a too big an existential or metaphysical question to ask. Like, in some sense, have they like completely ceased to be human beings in any meaningful sense? And like, I guess like in my darker moments, like I'm just like, well, of course they're human beings. This is what fucking people are like. But like, they cease to be human in any kind of spiritual or moral sense that matters, that separates us or like exalts us as like, I don't know, special or God's creatures or something like that. And I just like I really do worry though that like we may be too far around the bend and that we have like as a society like almost totally surrendered our humanity to this project.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
similar to malnutrition and starvation, like I think it passes a terminal point where I don't think like it can be helped anymore. And I worry about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Where do you go from here? I don't really know. We are going to brush up against these people too in our daily lives for the rest of our lives. You will encounter, whether you know it or not, someone who, yeah, shared that picture and said, well, he had a degenerative disease. Someone who said that, October 7th or whatever the fuck justifies all of this. What will that mean for your life, for theirs, for the people that come after us? I don't know.
One more thing, I did see an interview with Anthony Blinken the other week, where like he was like asked by Christine Amanpour, I think, like in some way to account for himself, and he was like, could you have not done more to bring this war like to a close or end it? He literally said, and this is this is the contempt that they have for you. This is the contempt that they have for humanity. He said, maybe the war would have ended sooner if all the protesters had just protested and asked Hamas to release the hostages and surrender. So it's like I had to support I could have ended this genocide if it weren't for those college students.
Yeah. I mean, what do you even like?
Because I know on some level this shames them, and I know on some level I know it seems like they're incapable of shame, and maybe they don't feel it about themselves personally, but they understand that if not shame, that it's a liability.
Right, right.
And that angers them, and they lash out at the people who they have there is no person that they have more contempt for than someone with a moral compass who turns out to be right. There's no one they hate more than an idealist who is proven correct.
Yeah. I mean, I am kind of speechless at that. But it does show that he at least thinks it's a professional failure.
Yeah.
And that he's spent nights contemplating who he can lay the blame on. And in typical Blinken fashion, it's fucking idiotic. I mean, that is the thing that is lost with Blinken. It's not that he was so much a canny operator who acted cynically in line with his ideology. Blinken is a non-entity. He can fool you because he has the pedigree and the look of someone who is substantial.
And he plays the blues. He's a hoochie man.
I mean, if that did not, I don't know how that didn't cause congressional hearings.
Yeah,
if I was a senator, I would have gone, does anyone hear this? Does anyone see that? What the fuck is this? But that is also a tell that he did that. What's worse about him is that he's a vacant non-entity, just not even a striver, like the child of strivers who has just coasted through fucking life and arrived here now. And similar to a lot of people, was angry at the fact that the issue of Palestine was not a dead issue, that it was something he had to contend with. And just out of sheer passiveness, he did all of this.
I'm not so sure it's passivity, because I think if he does have a North Star or something approaching a moral center, it is the Zionist project for him and his family.
I don't like.
I mean, he was like this in college. He was writing op-eds in the Harvard Crimson like years ago about how stupid the people who support Palestine are.
Oh no, yeah, no. I think he's like a virulent racist, but I think it's more like anger that this was an issue he had to contend with. He thought he could negotiate like AUKUS type things that he could put on his ledger for the rest of his life. And yes, he is a Zionist, but I don't think I think he was more annoyed that he had to show up to work than he was excited to exterminate people, though out of his just innate lifelong passivity. And by the way, writing
You're
those
right.
op-eds
He's
in
probably
college,
not happy that all these people got exterminated, but like he's more upset that he has to deal with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And him writing those op-eds in college, that is part of his, that's him doing the bare minimum. He did that because
he wanted to work for the State Department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's someone who has done the bare minimum his entire life and continues to do so. And that is sort of like one of the most upsetting things about his tenure, that he could have you didn't have to come here to play the blues. You could have just done it on your own time.
Just like in the waning minutes of the show, this episode, I would like to, like I said, I'd like to refocus back on the domestic sphere, to the ongoing farce of Donald Trump and the Jeffrey Epstein issue, which does not seem to be going away for him, even as he appears to be on the verge of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me say that again. He has already granted some sort of qualified immunity to her.
The DOJ has offered, I think it's conditional immunity.
Yeah. Conditional immunity. Yeah. Sorry, not qualified immunity. But her lawyers are already working on a pardon. And he made a statement just the other day where he says, I'm allowed to give her a pardon. Nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it. But right now, it would be inappropriate to talk about. And
okay, good.
Just today, he had probably one of the funniest things he said about Epstein yet. Which he said, quote,
I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island.
I never had the privilege of going to Epstein Island.
And he said, I turned it down.
He's like, yeah, I was offered. Jesus Christ.
Did you see that clip, by the way, of he was in Scotland, like just
oh my God, playing the cat Moonlight from Cats?
Yeah, looking spherical as ever. And he was just, fatly waddling around some
as his caddies caddies drop a golf ball. Him. Yeah,
and this I'll probably think about this on my deathbed. It was these Sky News shitheads. And them being Scottish made this clip so much funnier.
Are you enjoying our stay in Scotland, Mr. President?
They start out by going, "Are you going to join Scotland?" And he just sort of gestures fatly, both. And then they go, "Do you think you're being dragged down by the Epstein scandal?" And he just turns 180 degrees, gets back into the golf cart. And then they start blaring memories from Cats.
Bumping the song Moonlight from Cats.
Mr. Trump, can you escape the Jeffrey Epstein crisis?
Maybe that's why we heard this.
What's that song?
I don't know, it's very famous though.
It's from a musical.
Yeah. I thought it was Memories.
Memories. Okay, wait, I think it was Memories.
That is so perfect. That's the entire Trump thing. All of it, musicals, golf, responding horribly
Felix.
to a question about all these girls that you assaulted.
We were talking about this yesterday, but when the Donald Trump birthday poem for Epstein came out the other week, which is like the fact that we now have 3 poems written to Jeffrey Epstein by Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Leon Black that are all sound the same and are all bone chilling.
Yeah,
they're all like. And then you brought this up to me the other day that Don Jr. was just like, my dad would never doodle. And then, of course, people found dozens and dozens of doodles that he's done and auctioned off to various charities. But then he was like, do we really think Donald Trump would write a poem? And I'm just like, well, yes, obviously. He's a huge queen.
Yeah, J.D. Vance tried that too. And it's oh, yeah, what's next? He likes musicals.
Oh, do you think he really knows the word enigma?
Yeah, he's stupid. He's too stupid to be a pedophile. But all those poems, and I haven't seen Leon Black's. I'm kind of afraid to, but they are all things that Russ and Marty find in episode 7 in the tunnel residency. They're fucking. They all are like, you're a great guy. You still have that childlike wonder because of the secret things that we do together in our great friendship.
No! Yeah!
Age is an enigma, and like in Bill Clinton's poem, he was just like, "You have a childlike wonder about the world."
Donald Trump's is weird because it's written like a 2012 weird Twitter tweet kind of.
Yeah,
like it's a
voiceover dialogue format. Yeah.
It's so weird. Like I don't think he knows what or maybe that's what I always hear this term autofiction, not knowing what it is. Is that autofiction?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
It is. Yeah.
But it like they're all like the most horrifying things ever. Again, in a semi-functioning society, like Bill Clinton would be, marshals would be kicking in his door right now. But I don't know. This entire thing is kind of incredible because I pessimistically thought that what I thought would happen back in 2019 had happened. That this case had been turned into a meme and therefore made
rendered functionally meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah. The second I saw those it was like Daily Wire, The Blaze, or some bullshit place like that, where it was like
Epstein didn't kill himself. Hoodie.
We made Epstein didn't kill himself. Ugly Christmas sweaters. My heart just sank because I didn't expect like the system to go down, but I thought like this is so sordid and awful, and like there were probably almost certainly like girls were murdered. This is so just shockingly evil that like someone somewhere maybe will pay for this. We'll pay for something they did finally. But the moment I saw that, it was like, no, this will just get melted and blended into the just American consciousness, and it will become partly a QAnon thing, and it'll become partly like a crank coded thing, but nothing will ever happen. And of course, Trump will co-opt it, and he did. But then the fact that it's like coming back to bite him is kind of, I don't expect him to go to.
It's a host by your own retard situation.
Yeah, yeah. It's what's amazing about it is to me is, and my internet went out a lot on this Eating Derangements episode, but I did say it is being hoisted by your own petard because in the first Trump administration, they did have a lot of like adult chaperones. And some of those adult chaperones were people like Steve Mnuchin or H.R. McMaster or John Kelly, people who could do like the competent management of capital and warfare and diplomacy.
Well, Felix, I think the point that you made
but they also had Bill Barr. And Bill Barr is not like, he's not like James Baker. He's not like some diplomatic knife fighter. He's not some like, god. But he's just
his dad was the one who gave Epstein the job at Dalton.
Yeah, and his dad also wrote a horrifying
sci-fi about
sci-fi
girls,
novel about sexual slavery.
Yep.
But Bill Barr, if he has a soul at all, it died like 58 years ago. He understands the implicit, thing of, oh, if I come up in this, you'll just, shred those files, right? You don't even have to say it to him. That's the job he's done his entire life.
Yeah.
But when you hire Dan Bongino and fucking
Cash and Pete Hegseth, Felix, the point you made about this is like the first Trump administration had enough people around him who all knew how bad he was, all knew how evil and stupid he was to protect him. But like Hegseth, Cash, Bongino, fucking Pam Bondi, his press secretaries, they all love him and think he's like a brilliant, beautiful person whose soul is pure and he wants what's best for everyone.
Only stupid ass JD knows. And he's he's already become a father figure. He's never turning on him now.
Yeah.
Cash,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cash, he's not losing another. Cash, I wish I was like a fly on the wall for that when Cash and Dan realized when they were like, oh my God, I think Mr. Trump did something horrible. I'm turning in my CBD pill.
Cash went cross-eyed. He was like, what?
Like, think about Dan Bongino putting on Kid Rock and like crying.
Oh, with the bud. He's just sobbing in his car. He's in the files.
Oh my fucking God.
The questions that don't have any answers.
Like, I love how Dan and Cash were like, this will ruin our credibility. And it's like, I always bring things back to Master of the Senate because that used to mean like, oh, you were a general in World War II, and you had like a 20-year career as a diplomat, or you served like 8 terms in the Senate. All this institutionalist credibility. But with Dan and Cash, they're like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to sell CBD chocolate milk to our idiot listeners when we go back to podcasting. All the credibility we built up on our live streams, it's gone.
Yeah. It's astonishing. And like, Felix, I don't know if you've been following this thing that they've like, it's like in the exact repeat of the first Trump administration, right? With the Russiagate stuff. And like, the thing was, that was very effective because they made it about Democrats and like, they neutralized that issue, which was like, half of it was bullshit to begin with. The fact that they're doing this again now, and they're being like, we're going to impeach Barack Obama for doing a coup in Trump's first administration. But like, the thing about this is that this time around, it is not working.
Yeah, because I mean, imagine Russiagate if Donald Trump when he was running in 2016, he was like, the entire point of my campaign is that Hillary like hung out with Lev Parnas.
Yeah.
And then all the Russiagate stuff happened. I don't think their counterattacks would have been quite so effective. I mean, Trump, it wasn't so much a Trump signature issue as it was a huge issue of his surrogates that they loved and that he encouraged. But I will not, like, his campaign absolutely took advantage of the entire Epstein issue this time around. But I will note, every time that someone personally asked him about it, he seemed like very uneasy.
Oh, very cagey.
Yeah.
Like when that Fox News interview, when they were like, are you going to declassify the JFK files? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, the 9/11 files? Yep. The Epstein files? And he was like, yeah. But, I'd be a little careful with that because there's a lot of phony stuff out there about that.
How was that not... I mean, I am amazed by anyone who, like, this is the time they chose to ride the Trump train.
Yeah.
Because... I'll just say this. No one can say they didn't fucking warn you. There's no one
already
less
president
sympathetic.
for one term.
He was fucking president when this happened.
I know.
He was fucking...
I know.
I don't get it. I don't get how they're like, how could this happen to me? Like Andrew Schultz, all these guys who like, all the podcast guys. Andrew Schultz said something like, I don't see why people are yelling at me. I didn't vote for this. Yes, you did. Yes, you fucking did, because he did it. He told you he was going to do it.
And like, we talked about this the other week, where it's just like, as this becomes like even more like a glaring reality of just like the unresolved nature of this whole Epstein saga and how deeply it implicates like 2 presidents and quite a bit more than that. On both the left and right, like among the Democrats and the Republicans, the more savvy media people, there seems to be this kind of walking back about like, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves about the implications of this. He wasn't running a blackmail ring, he wasn't a Mossad agent, and let's be honest, clear here: whatever immunity or pardon they give to Ghislaine Maxwell will be in exchange for her testimony that it was only Bill Clinton and not Donald Trump or Israel behind all of it.
She's going to say, like, John Legend was there.
Yeah. It was
John Legend, Pete Davidson, Harry Sisson, it was all of them. Donald Trump came
Bill Gates,
Donald Trump was carrying 2 Browning high-powered. He actually did all the stuff from the movie Sound of Freedom. Donald Trump was wearing a sneaking suit, and he slit Jeffrey Epstein's throat.
But what I say is like back to this kind of like too smart by half kind of like, let's not get too over let's not get too carried away with like the implications of this conspiracy, because like the evidence shows that like, yes, him and Ghislaine trafficked and abused teenage girls, like sometimes in the presence of his very powerful famous friends like Prince Andrew or Alan Dershowitz or Bill Clinton or Donald Trump for that matter. But like, let's not get too conspiratorial about it. I will just note that as part of Ghislaine's, actually, she's bringing a case to the Supreme Court, apparently, about that basically arguing that her conviction should be overturned or that she should be pardoned. I forget the specifics of it, but what her lawyers the claim her lawyers are advancing is because that she is covered by the plea agreement, the same plea agreement that Jeffrey Epstein made with former Trump Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta when he went to prison in 2017 in Florida. And that plea deal immunized him and, quote, co-conspirators from prosecution for that as part of that plea deal. So, like, as far as I know, they may have a good legal case that she should be let out of prison, that she is covered. But like, what I mean here, what I'm getting at is that, like, I have never heard from anyone a satisfactory explanation or even acknowledgement of the fact that Alexander Acosta is on public record as saying of Epstein, I couldn't touch him. He, quote, he belonged to intelligence. We've talked about this on the show for years. What does you think that means?
Yeah. Yeah.
What, like, who's it? Like, who is he referring to?
Maybe he means like a really smart guy.
He belongs.
Stephen
Hawking. It was Stephen Hawking. He was the intelligence.
Stephen Hawking's friend.
He was
Stephen
the smart guy.
Hawking's friend. He's going to invent some wormhole thing. I don't know what it is. No, I mean, it's a coincidence. He said that. Ehud Barak went to his house like 78 fucking times. That the second this went into circulation, that Mossad was like, actually, no, we've never heard of him. Never. I mean, I don't really see what other intelligence. I mean, the CIA, sure. I mean, there were, goddamn, I always forget this guy's name, but the guy during the 1980s who did this, but just for Craig Spence. Craig Spence did a sort of version of this whole blackmail scheme, but for probably American intelligence during the Reagan and Bush administrations. Craig Spence, who also committed suicide under less weird, but kind of weird circumstances. But I mean, the thing with this whole Israeli intelligence angle, obviously, I do think he was involved heavily with
just
Mossad.
Look at Ghislaine's father. Look at Robert Maxwell. But this is an interesting thing. Look up who attended Robert Maxwell's funeral.
And the thing,
because it included like several former heads of the Israeli state and Mossad.
They said I think at or after his funeral, the world will never know all the things he did for Israel. But I mean, there's just tons of circumstantial evidence for this. I will say it is interesting. All the people who like stake their credibility on Trump and Trump like uncovering the Epstein stuff, who are now like tugging their collars. TrueAnon talked about this, how they're trying to, the first like juke they tried to pull off was try to make it sound like, oh, Israel is bringing this stuff up again because they're mad at Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. Good luck, fellas.
Yeah.
I don't know how this ends. I mean, I would love to see how JD contends with this, because he's been doing a great job.
I mean, honestly, you know, like when this shit first started, like I was sort of taken aback by like the anger I was seeing from like MAGA accounts. But like, that's social media. It's all phantoms and illusions. I think it is kind of overrated that this is going to cause some sort of schism between Trump and his base. I think they're going to compartmentalize it or just actively start congratulating him for it. You know, like, yeah. I think they're going to get into like it's a femophilia, not pedophilia. And like, you know, I mean, these girls wanted to be there. And hey, it's not my daughter.
The most craven people were already going for that. I kind of agree with you. I don't think it will be like, I don't think like no one will support him, but I think it means like, well, part of his strength this time electorally was low propensity voters. And I think that this is poison for them, as most of the other stuff in the admin has been.
I'm talking about like the MAGA people, not the low information voters, the people who are committed like MAGA partisans.
But I do also think, though, that it will see that base shrinking. I don't think that means that, like, you know, a fifth of them become Democrats. I just think it means like this is their Obama moment. This is them checking out of politics.
Yeah, definitely. Just one last thing on this. I wasn't aware of this, but Felix, you've talked about we talked Leon Black, of course, founder of Apollo Global Management, the guy who paid Jeffrey Epstein $158 million for tax advice.
Yeah, what do the billable hours on that look like?
He also paid $62 million for immunity to settle an Epstein suit, in which he admitted that the money he gave Epstein funded his operations. His son, Leon Black's son, Benjamin Black, was nominated just now by Donald Trump. I mean, his confirmation hearing was supposed to be
fucking kidding me.
Okay, his son, Benjamin Black, Leon Black's son, was nominated by Donald Trump to be the chief executive officer of the United States International Development Finance Corporation. Now, his confirmation hearing was scheduled to be happen at the beginning of this month, July 8th. But the Senate stalled on bringing that nomination to a full vote. And then also keep in mind, Mike Johnson sent everyone home for the summer to avoid having any vote on having any Epstein related stuff come up to a vote, probably because he knows that, like, for the first time in a long time, like there's enough of their voters that will be mad at them for the way they're going to vote on any Epstein related, on any bill that's designed to get any kind of disclosure as this. They're just like, nope, we're going home for the summer.
Oh my God. Of course, I mean, I don't know why I'm shocked, but Benjamin fucking Black, one of Leon Black's like shadow children. Oh my God.
Yes.
I'm looking up. He sort of looks like if Casey Affleck was evil, like really evil, not just like oh no, actually, he kind of looks like Blinken more.
A little bit.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a Blinken look. Oh my God.
Well, once again,
Leon Black is such a fucking ogre. Like, there's so many like creepy finance guys involved in that whole thing. Like Glenn Dubin buying his wife from Epstein is obviously that entire saga is horrifying. It does sort of make you look back into the rumors that we've heard about how Donald Trump basically bought Melania.
Yeah.
And some people say Epstein introduced them. But Leon Black is like, he's definitely one of the most evil-looking guys I've ever seen. Like, he looks like what he is, which is a rapist ogre.
It's going to be entertaining to see, because, like, luckily, I don't think this issue is going away anytime soon, and I don't think that there are ham-fisted efforts to just be like, you should be talking about the Obama Russiagate scandal, like, in 2025. Is really going to get or any of their like, hey, next week, everybody, we're telling you the truth about aliens. That's right. They're real. There's going to be we're bringing out one of the Greys. He's going to give a press conference. He's going to communicate with you telepathically.
Like, the moment they brought out the Greys, it was like, oh, he like ate an infant's spine, like it was an oyster.
Jesus.
My favorite thing he did was by the way, it's hilarious that they're bringing out Obamagate, the most boring. Like, this is where
it's so boring compared to like the absolutely lurid and horrifying details of the Epstein case.
This is Bruce and Nellie Orr. They're from Obamagate, the most boring story ever. My favorite thing was the first thing he tried, where he was like, he couldn't even remember the name of the place in Texas, that girls' camp. And he was like, you're talking about this now after those dead bitches died in the fucking South?
I've said this before about Trump, and people got mad at me. But I said, like, if there's one thing I have a perverse respect for Donald Trump about, it's that, like, you'll never catch him, like, leaving teddy bears on a street corner or something.
Oh, yeah.
It's like whenever people die in, like, a horrible natural disaster, like, Trump's obvious open contempt for them, I've always found sort of perversely amusing, because he's just like, by definition, anyone who dies in a flood that way is a loser.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've never heard him say that, but I know
that's what he's thinking. Yeah. Like, he's just like, it's really disrespectful of you to ask me about my lifelong friendship with the most notorious sex trafficker in American history, when these beautiful girls at Camp Krusty died or something.
Yeah. He thought that entire thing. He was like, can't they make some more? When you heard Camp Mystic, it instantly left his ears. He was like, yeah, fucking right. The guy would ever send my kids there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll it bears watching. I'll be interested to see where this story is going. I'm just interested to see what he's going to say next. So someone said this earlier today, but like, it really does suck that Donald Trump is unfortunately like imperiling the lives of, I don't know, everyone on this planet, and not just the funniest fictional character who's ever existed. But like, I'm looking forward to where this story goes and what he says and does next to try to deal with it.
I didn't have the privileges. Fucking insane.
I didn't have the privilege. I turned it down.
Is he just gonna like bring a guy with a loudspeaker around like Eric Adams, but the guy's gonna play Memories?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe something from Phantom. I don't know. Let's switch it up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna close it out for today's show. Just two quick things before we exit. I know I've been ending every show with a reminder about our comic book anthology, which is still in pre-sales, but it's like will only be so until August 1st. So like this is your really the waning hours for your chance to pre-order the first volume of our comic book anthology, and I'd like to encourage you to do that. But I don't want to leave it like that because like I don't want to like make an appeal to you to spend your money, especially given what we've talked about on this episode, without highlighting an organization that I think you should also give money to as well. It's called the Samir Project, and it's a donations-based aid initiative that is led by Palestinians, and there are people on the ground in Gaza that are basically working to keep people alive, and I would have no hesitation whatsoever recommending that if you're looking for a source to just like do whatever you can, like any amount of money that you're able to part with, if you just like, and I know like charity in the face of this kind of the horror that we talked about on this show, like it can sometimes be a little embarrassing or I don't know, like you think like, does this really help or whatever? But like, what I will say is that like, you are able to do something. And like I would just encourage you to share the links to donate to the projects organized by the Samir Project. Give them money directly. It's something you can do when like your mind is trying to process the absolute evil that you see every day, and the continued perpetration of evil, and just the desecration of human life, and just like our shared humanity in such a profound way. I think this is like a small but meaningful way to fight back against that, or to preserve some shred of humanity, like for yourself, or just like feel like because you are doing something and it does count. It really does. So I will include the links for the Samir Project. They have a link tree. They have a Twitter account. I like they're an organization that has been recommended to me by people that I trust, people who have been on the show before, and I think I would have no hesitation or compunction to make a plea to you to consider giving money to any one of the projects that this organization is spearheading right now by Palestinians in Gaza at this moment. Like it's meaningful, and like it will make a difference in the life of someone right now. So that is how I'm going to end today's show.
Yeah, it is. It's been vouched by people who we trust and would know if an organization like this is actually helping people. And thinking and reading and hearing about all these horrific people and institutions and what it means for us and the rest of our lives and this country, it is, like Will said, it can feel kind of harrowing, and donating to a charity, in the face of that, you may ask yourself if it's enough or if it's doing anything. But we can't tell you, at the very least, that doing this, it will be the difference between, a family having something to eat or not. And that is infinitely more than just sort of stewing in impotence or rage, as understandable as that is.